Steve is back with us to tell us how it shakes down. With Steve, 18 games left to go once we kick off Sunday Night Football.
And we really have almost chaos when it comes to the wild card here in the AFC. Let's take a look here. There are 4 teams right now that are sort of scrambling for the final 3 spots. You see, they're all 10-5. It's the same 4 teams that were scrambling for those spots a week ago. But look, the order is completely different. That Fitz magic last night, look at that. It vaults Miami from nearly being out of the playoffs to now being in the 5th seed to having an 88% shot of making it. Baltimore, we've been saying for weeks, they've been knocking on the door. This week, they move into the 6th spot. Cleveland, for a while today, looked like they'd fall out altogether. Instead, it's Indianapolis that is on the outside looking in. So what does this set up for Week 17? Let's take a look here at the AFC picture next week. So here you go. Miami, Baltimore, Cleveland. For each one, very simple. Win next week, they are in the playoffs. That's all they have to do. Now, for Miami in particular, you see that 88% shot they now have. One of the reasons for that is they do have a tough game next week. Let's say they lose to the Bills next week. They could still make the playoffs because they're now in the 5th spot and control some tiebreakers. A Baltimore loss next week, Miami is in. A Cleveland loss, Miami is in. An Indy loss, Miami is in. So there are a lot of scenarios now for Miami to make the playoffs. For Baltimore, for Cleveland, it's a little more complicated. For Indianapolis, they need a win next week and help. They need either Cleveland to lose or Baltimore or Miami. They need one of those teams to lose. Then they could get in. Or the other team we're not mentioning here, the team playing tonight, Tennessee. If Tennessee collapses, loses their last 2 games, Indy could still win that division, could still get in, and Tennessee could affect some of these scenarios. But for Indy, they got to win, and they got to get some help. For these other 3 teams, win and they're in.
All of a sudden, Chicago's turned it around. But, Steve Kornacki, you can give us a better path of how the Bears are a win over Green Bay next week and into the playoffs.
Yeah, whiplash on this playoff roller coaster for the Bears. Let's take you through what it's been like. They were 5-1 out of the gate this year. October 18th, they had nearly an 80% chance at that point, it looked like, of making the playoffs. Then nearly 2 entire calendar months of losing. 6 straight losses for the Bears. That brought you into December. They were in their playoff chances were on life support in early December. Then they get those 2 wins. They knock off Houston and Minnesota. It puts them back in the playoff picture, and things have changed in a big way in the last 48 hours. Check this out. Last night, Arizona losing to San Fran, that alone put Chicago over 50% their playoff chances. It opened the door if they could take care of business against Jacksonville today, which you just showed us. They did. So now the Bears with a 70% chance of making the playoffs. As you say, a win or an Arizona loss. The only break the Bears didn't get today, Seattle took care of business, knocked off the Rams. That means the Packers are probably going to have to play next week to get that top seed against Seattle. It means the Bears playing the Packers next week. Probably not going to get a pass in that one with the Packers resting folks.
Right, but Arizona plays the Rams, and the Rams are going to need that now for their hopes as well. Steve Kornacki, the NFC East, will crown a champ eventually next week.
Nobody seems to want to win it, but somebody's going to, so let's try to figure it out. You put the groundwork there, Mike. Look, Washington had the chance today. They couldn't take advantage of it. Next week, it'll be Washington and Philly. If Washington wins, that's it. They win the division. They're in. But if Washington loses next week, then the door opens wide for the Cowboys and for the Giants. They play each other. With a Washington loss, Dallas, they're in with the win. They'd be 7-9. Or with a Washington loss and a win by the Giants next week, 6-10, New York would have the tiebreaker, would win the division with double-digit losses, would host a playoff game. That is possible right now. The only thing we know for sure in this division, the Eagles have been eliminated. Again, the winner of this division is going to get the number 4 seed in the NFC here. What about the wild card scenario in the NFC? Let's call that one up right now. Again, the 4th seed is going to go to the NFC East winner. The wild card not popping up, I can tell you. We've been talking about Arizona and Chicago being in contention for that wild card. Chicago win next week, and here it is. Chicago wins next week, and they're in. Here's where things got interesting, though, in the NFC wildcard picture. It's the Rams and Arizona, because they're going to play next week. The Rams now have dropped a couple straight. If Arizona beats the Rams next week, Arizona's in the playoffs. And if Arizona beats the Rams and Chicago wins, Chicago beats Green Bay, guess what? It's the Rams who drop all the way out of the playoffs. It could be Chicago and Arizona. That's in the NFC. And then in the AFC, we just show you again quickly, 4 teams for 3 spots. You got Miami, Baltimore, Cleveland, Indianapolis. Win and they're in, win and they're in, win and they're in next week. Indianapolis is going to need to win and have one of these teams lose or Tennessee collapse.